What's going on, guys? Welcome back. If you hate toxic and junk decks, you're gonna freaking hate this week as White Widow hits the scene this Tuesday. Alex and I are gonna break her down, the synergies and everything you need to know, as well as is she worth going for in her Spotlight cash for Snow Guard and Nico. On top of that, Marvel Snap Clans. We have a lot of data leaked information on how it's gonna work. The newest feature coming to the game. Alex and I are gonna break down our opinions on that as well. And then we're gonna finish things off with the top 10 list of the best junk and toxic cards right now in Marvel Snap, as Alex and I rank our top 10. We're going to talk about that all today and more on this episode of the Snapchat. And as always, I'm joined by Mr. Alex Coccia. Hello, my friend, as we enter the end of April. We got a couple weeks left. How we doing?
Cozy, I gotta be honest with you. I think we need to start with a Snapchat therapy session. I've had a hell of a day, my man, and I could use a little talking to because, okay, let's just set the stage here, all right? Have an incredibly busy weekend. This morning, we're getting the kids ready to go to my niece's birthday party, okay? Now, we're outnumbered, my wife and I. We have 4 kids. There's 2 of us. And so while we're putting, like, you know, the shoes on the little ones, the babies and stuff like that, our older 2, they go and they run around in the grass and they play around. Now, our 5-year-old son, he's in junior kindergarten, and he loves doing math, loves math. To the point that when we're in the car, like, we ask him math questions all the time, like, hey, what's 5 plus 3? And, you know, what's 2 plus 4? And he's so excited to answer because he's working on his math. And as, you know, good parent that I'd like to be, I'm like, hey, always practice your math, little man. Practice your math. And he took it to heart. He's like, yeah, I'm going to practice my math. So this is what he did. This morning, while I was putting the shoes on, you know, our baby, and like we're getting all ready, my son goes outside and he's like, oh, I can't wait for mom and dad to ask me math questions in the car. So I'm going to start practicing now. So he got a little stone from the road and he started etching math questions into the side of our car. And so we were, you know, just kind of getting the kids ready. We come out and he's etched like multiple, like, you know, junior kindergarten math equations into the side panel of our vehicle, like right down to the metal. And I was just like, this is why we can't have nice things.
Did he at least get them correct? Was it 2 plus 2 is 4, or did he, you know, hit you with a 2 plus 2 is 5?
He wrote like 8 plus 4 equals, then started writing other ones too. Like he hadn't answered them yet. He was setting up the page on the side of our vehicle. So that's what my day's been like.
Okay, no, this reminds me of I went to it was like one of the first times I was meeting Ben Brode. We went up there to do, I think it was the Loki shoot, and he drives a Tesla, and I was like, cool, like, nice Tesla. What are all of these marks on the side? And I mean, it just looks like someone just like same thing, just like took, and he's like, my kids, man, my kids. So I mean, you're not alone, all right? It's a badge of honor. Pour one out, guys, for Alex's car, and what a way to bring in the Monday, buddy, outside of your car. How you doing, man? How's your snap going?
Oh, it's been great. I think that, you know, I've been experimenting with a whole lot of different decks, and I kind of like where the meta's at. I feel Marvel Snap seems like it's in a bit of like this, like, you know, this like treadmill mode of like, hey, we got this cadence of releases down, and I'm really hoping that the next few patches can really shake some things up, not just from like a gameplay perspective, but from like a feature perspective. I'm really looking forward to Marvel Snap improving as a game. And so I think right now we're kind of in like this treadmill mode, and I'm hoping for a nice injection of fun.
It kind of reminds me of, I don't play a lot of it, but Fortnite. And why I say that is, like, when Fortnite came out, they knew they had a really good game, right? And the gameplay, the core gameplay was great. So they just did a lot of cosmetics. They didn't change a lot up because the core gameplay was good. And they would introduce new things every now and then, kind of like we get new cards. But then after a while, it was like, all right, you have your fundamental, like it was the building thing. I couldn't even keep up with the kids, but the building mode, right? And then after a while, they were like, let's do something drastically different. We need to really change some of our core identity. And they actually, I believe, took away the building mode, and then it was just like Fortnite was much different moving forward, and now it's a completely different game, and they kind of pivoted from just having just that one great game mode. And I kind of feel the same with Snap, right? Like, we've had Snap is just a fun game, right? And you bring in new cards, and it's extremely maintaining that fun. But I agree, man. I'm ready for a new feature. I'm ready for a new game mode. Like, we're about to head into summer. I think it's the perfect time to introduce that. Today, we're going to be talking about clans, which I think is a nice seasoning, but we need the full dish as well. And so I'm excited to break all that down. Maybe we can talk more about it when we do talk about clans here as the second subject. We got some new leaked information, but on Alex's side, what are we talking about?
Cozy will be discussing the Red Guardian, giving our review and our impressions on this first week of Red Guardian gameplay. We'll also be discussing the top 10 worst cards in Marvel Snap. This is going to be a really fun discussion. I can't wait to get into it. And then finally, of course, our Snapchat mailbag.
Well, buddy, let's get right to it. We've had a couple of these weeks happen before where we've got like a junk or toxic card come out. And this kind of reminds me, it's eerily similar of as we were going, I think, towards the end of November into December. Junk was like on the rise. It was hot. We know we've got an OTA later, coming up this week. Clog decks and junk decks are already at a really good and competitive spot in the game. And if you play them even more so, you're going to be freaking out about White Widow, I think. Guys, if you don't know, White Widow is a 2-cost, 2-power card. On reveal, she's going to add a Widow's Kiss to your opponent's side of this location, and the Widow's Kiss is going to have an ongoing ability that it's going to be -4 power. The only way to turn this off is to fill your own side with 4 cards. Alex, let's go to kick it off. We'll talk about the spotlights and all, but hit me with no synergies, nothing, just a simple star rating.
Simple star rating, I'm going to go with 3, but that is like a 3 where I'm like, I can see myself missing low here. But like, the more I've thought about White Widow, the more I'm comfortable with the 3-star rating.
Yeah, you know what? I don't want to overrank her, and I kept going between 3.5 and 4. A bit of me wants to go towards the top end on 4, just after kind of looking at where junk is. Her biggest ability, what we'll go into here, being the cheapest way to clog a lane at all, and only being 2 costs. We love our 2-cost cards, but yeah, I'm probably going to settle around 4 and aim a little high on this week. And guys, let's go and talk about the spotlights before we get into it, Alex. So we got Snowguard and Nico, which, double up 1-cost cards here. Not bad cards if you don't have them, for sure, especially on the Nico front. And if White Widow ends up delivering, I think you ultimately have a pretty good week.
Oh, for sure. Like, I actually really like Snowguard a lot. And even outside of Loki decks at times, I think that Snowguard's probably underappreciated for what it can do, like with its actual Bear and Hawk. But overall, like, I think these are 2 really good cards. They're definitely worth having in your collection. And they're also 2, I think for some degree, like in Loki, your Snowguard is going to be replaceable. Like something like an Agent 13 can almost do it, right?
Yeah.
But not really. But like Nico is irreplaceable. Like in so many different decks, whether you're playing Phoenix Force, Destroy, or pretty much anything that Nico seems to get splashed into. Nico is like a 5-star card that I think everyone needs to have in their collection. So for that reason only, I think you should be rolling for sure.
Yeah, I think next week we should do like I know we're doing the worst cards on your side, but we should do like a cards you have to have in your collections and ones you don't have to. Not necessarily they're bad, but you can kind of miss. And I feel like Snowguard's good, but like replaceable. Whereas Nico, I would probably put as a top 10 most important card to have in a collection. Like, it's just that impactful across decks. So, yeah, if you don't have Nico, guys, now's the week to do so. But let's talk White Widow, man. Let's talk about the card in general, why give it a 4, why you give it a 3. And we'll start with, obviously, the synergies here. I mean, right off the rip, man, she's gone through some iterations here. But, hey, the cheapest way to fill a location on turn 2, that alone, all the way up until probably turn 6. I would say even turn 5 has a lot of value, if not more value. That is where I like her. I think the ability to clog a lane, we have seen it before, and now some new synergy that she'll have with some cards that we just had released. That's where I have her high, man. An instant space throw, an instant lockup when they're trying to do a Hope Summers thing. That's where I think the value is going to be with White Widow.
It is really impactful to those bounce style decks. They're not even just bounce, like this, like the Silky Smooth style decks that run like the Angelos, Kitties, and stuff like that, because you just run out of space so fast. And the thing I was thinking about as well, synergistically, was like, okay, how do you make a location not necessarily like full? Because like I know that you want to encourage them to play there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, what if you just make that location useless and they're like, no, that's gone. I'm not even gonna try. Like if you do like a turn 2 Widow's Kiss and then a turn 3 Green Goblin. Like, okay, the Green Goblin's helping them set their, -4 back to 0, but the location, that's 2 cards that are completely useless. Like, at best, you can leave the space open and drop, like, a Red Hulk there, right? And hope to gap that power. But there's a good chance you're just like, okay, that location's just gone. Like, the 2 cards are already occupying it in negative fashion.
Dude, that's how I feel about, like, Hobgoblin. If I get Hobgoblin, I'm like, it's done. Kill it now, it's over. Like, the Void, I try to come up with maybe, but Hobgoblin, I always just know it's too late. Too little, too late. And that's why I think she's going to be good, dude, because to your point, she curves so well. That 2 is just a perfect curve. And then if you draw her late, as we've seen, she doesn't have some of the effects that these other cards do, where it's okay to play her late outside of maybe turn 6, and sometimes even turn 6, so long as they, haven't played a lot of cards, you get that guaranteed -4. So I do agree. I think you can use it on the offensive like that. But what's also cool is if you want to play defensively and you pair up with something like Shang-Chi or even Killmonger, let's say they've got, a Magneto on that lane, but they're winning. They got a lot of cards there. Maybe they have like a couple of 8 power cards. Your Shang-Chi all of a sudden is destroying the biggest card. It's opening the slot that was full, and it's putting -4 now. So you're getting this massive swing, and that's where I think the combo play is really going to start snowballing with Widow.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's so many macro considerations with this card. Like the more I thought about the play lines and how you'd approach actually getting this into a deck and being effective with it, the more I realized that the card has potential, even if the location does get filled and it's only a 2/2 and the 0 power thing is 0 power. But ultimately, if you think about this, right, you play Nebula into a lane, right? Yep. Nebula's going to tick up if they don't play there. You play Widow's Kiss into another lane, or the White Widow, I should say. Now they're like, okay, well, this -4 sitting here, I have to fill this location eventually. But if I fill there, I can't do anything about this damn Nebula. It's going to tick up over and over again.
Yep.
Similarly, you can go do something like, okay, you play, the Hood on the left. You play Widow's Kiss in the middle. And then you play a Sentry at some point. They can't fill the void, right? They can't block off the Hood. They can't do it all, right, Cozy?
Yep. And that's where I think it's going to, even Lizard to a degree, right? Like you have all these cards that they can't deal with. They're going to have to pick something. And then you're going to have more tools to keep on punishing them, right? So if they do pick a lane, you could just make them choose that wrong lane, right? Like, let's say they pick fill in the middle lane. That's when you go with the Green Goblin play or whatever. And they're just like, what do I have left in the arsenal? And that's where, outside of a couple archetypes we'll get to, I agree, man. Even something like Storm, you can simply just play Widow into Widow's Kiss, storm it up. They cannot fill that in time. And it's -4. You have 3 more turns to win one other lane. I mean, that's massive. I think that's such an easy way to get huge value out of her. And because of that, just alone Storm. But I'm telling you, I think the Kingpin move kind of synergy is also really unique and interesting. So if you play a Kingpin deck and you want to pair that up with Polaris and you want to pair that up with cards that are moving back away from that lane, maybe they're trying to fill it and you're moving cards from the lane they're trying to fill, but also pushing more negative power on them. I think it's disgusting.
That's actually 5-head. I like that. That's pretty cool. I hadn't considered Kingpin and the ability for you to disrupt their ability to fill that location with Juggernauts and Polaris and stuff like that. That's a good call, Cozy.
Yeah.
Now I got one more synergy I want to mention here as well. That is I think is pretty damn good. And you kind of brought it up in some degree with the Storm, but I want to add something to that because it's part of my little list of play patterns. So turn 2 White Widow, turn 3 Storm. On turn 4, you could sneak a Crossbones there. Because you are most certainly winning that location. They won't be able to play Shang-Chi into it on turn 5 or 6 unless they play War Machine or something like that. But ultimately, you're going to have this super powerful lane that they really cannot compete with. So I actually think that might be pretty cool too.
Yeah, and we haven't seen people have done the math and okay, if you do Hood and then Grandmaster, let's say, you're spending 2 for another demon. Okay, and then it's a 2/6. You got to work out the math there a little bit. But I think Grandmaster, I know we always think okay, hey, more on reveals. Talk about a tremendous freaking double hit. I mean, getting 2 Widow Kisses over to their lane, even on turn 4, and you play 2 and 2. You just put them both down. The panic, at that point, it's what do? You have 2 -4 lanes. You played 4 power to put out essentially 10 power of total overall value. So I think Grandmaster has, to an effect, a pretty good chance to also synergize with her. There's just a lot of different combinations, and I feel like Junk already has that, where you can just punish them no matter what decision they're doing and no matter what they are playing. So for that reason, I think she's got a lot of tremendous value there. What about Cannonball? I think Cannonball we were both kind of low on. I've been playing a lot more movement style decks, and he's fitting right in there pretty well. We finally have another card for him to work with as well.
Yeah, because they could fill the location and then get knocked into it or something like that. Or B, you can use Cannonball to displace a card in that location and then, cause the -4 to happen on the ongoing card. I like Cannonball. And Cannonball's one of those cards that is kind of aging like fine wine a little bit.
Yeah.
He still is occasionally kind of awkward to play around, but you're seeing some archetypes come up where okay, wait, Cannonball's actually pretty decent here. The disruption is pretty good here. And it's not always the destruction effect but sometimes it is also the destruction effect, right? You get an opportunity to destroy their biggest power card, and that can't be understated. In fact, if you have given up initiative, it almost feels similar to a Shang-Chi play, but with a power, or like an Eliath play, where if they're playing their Red Hulk, it comes down and it just gets knocked into a Professor X location or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So Cannonball's tricky. I think it's a high skill cap card, and it has its moments and it has its frustrations. But I think that as players continue to play more of it, just like I have and you mentioned as well, it looks like it's starting to shine a little bit.
And I think he's the perfect example of what I mean by you punish them no matter what. Like, even if they do the correct thing and they fill that lane, then Cannonball is going to have something to say with that, right? So, like, with the movement package and then with the junk cards, there's just so much going on. I've been playing a fair amount of Control with Daredevil again, and I also think Daredevil's a really cool card with Widow's Kiss and just this package. It makes it brain dead easy to read what they're doing and then just adjust accordingly, right? So if they have 2 lanes or 3 cards and you see on turn 5 they're doing 1 lane, it's a simple Widow Kiss on another potentially, and to either clog or put the -4 or play Cannonball, and you know they only have so many lanes that are full. Like, there's a lot of reaction cards that you can play in turn with Daredevil as well. Makes it a bit easier. Alex and I are going to talk about some great junk and toxic cards if you guys have been out of it for a while. But it's going to be, listen, it's going to be a week full of this stuff, which also means it's going to be a week full of Destroy and a week full of Annihilus, right? The 2 easiest ways to handle all the stuff coming right at you. And so I know people who they're just thrilled to do it. Will this finally be a card, Alex, that brings Jean Grey some potential?
Possible. It's definitely possible, because I mean, like, there's been a lot of hopium huffed for Jean Grey in the past. A lot. I mean, you've huffed so much medical grade hopium for the entire community on Jean Grey at times.
Lethal.
Some of the best variants in the game. Would love for this card to be relevant. And it, in theory, has such a powerful control effect. But Kitty Pryde and everything else that's come out has just laughed in Jean Grey's face. But maybe, just maybe, having that disruption element where you play that the White Widow's bite into one location, you Jean Grey another one, and they're just like, well, how the heck am I supposed to? Like, that's the thing, right? You got Nebula in one lane, you got White Widow in the other, then you got Jean Grey in the middle, and they're like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah, and that's where ultimately the problem I find with Jean Grey, I do enjoy her a ton, but when I try to make a control build built around her, Storm and her I don't like them in the same deck. It's weird to have them both in the hand sometimes. It's cool having the either or, but I almost always pick Storm, right? You have location control, and she's doing a lot of the same effect of what Jean Grey is. You can just pick out to win a lane a little bit easier. Jean's obviously differently, but the way it curves out just feels nicer and less punishing. But I agree here. If you're able to play Jean, and then you're able to get that Widow's Kiss off, that -4, they're not going to be able to get rid of that. And then you just have to focus on that one lane, most likely, the Jean Grey lane, which most of the time you can just win. Shang-Chi, Negasonic, you got cards now that are built to win against it. So I do think Jean has a possible place here. It could be edged out by Storm. She could. But that's my initial thought there. I do have a couple other synergies, but I want to hand the floor to you. Anything else you want to say on Widow?
Yeah, one thing I wanted to mention was Ravonna, and I think this is like kind of like a synergy that might not be inherently obvious, but it goes back to what you were mentioning about Grandmaster. If you think about what Ravonna can do, Ravonna synergizes with the Goblins and so many other packages, but mainly it's going to synergize with that Grandmaster. That means that you can play Ravonna on turn 2, and then on turn 3, you can play both the White Widow and Grandmaster, and then on turn 4, you can play Hobgoblin. Ooh. That is a very aggressive line. Like, that's a snappable line, and I think that when like you start to notice these specific patterns that are snappable, right? I think that's a key thing, right? In Marvel Snap, you can have win rate, but the cube rate's important too. And when you have cards that really illustrate like, oh, this is a snappable moment, I think that helps with the power. And I think, like, for instance, Right Guardian has a couple of those moments. And a lot of major good high impact cards have those moments, right?
Yep.
And I feel like Ravonna with White Widow creates a play pattern where you're at such an advantage. I don't see how your opponent can really catch up.
Yeah, discount disrupt is what I used to call it back in the Ravonna days, and I loved pairing that with Darkhawk. And I would have this, I could start with Korg if I wanted to, and then 2 would be great to get Ravonna out there. If not, we have some other options. You can even go with White Widow now, great 2 to curve in there. Then Rock Slide, and then you can kind of work your way down while you're disrupting, you're pushing stuff on them, and just it's punishing. But you know what, dude? As we headed into November to December, there was one deck that we were all worried about. It was getting way too good. Junk was powering it up way too much. You remember the deck?
No.
It's okay. Werewolf by Night, man. Werewolf by Night with the junk package. Do you remember the chaos of all the cheap on-reveal junk packages? I think this could finally be a time where he could come back with the bounce package. Okay, with Beast, we have a brand new Beast ready to rock and roll. White Widow's an on-reveal. And we've got this Beast bounce junk package again with Werewolf by Night. I actually think it's got a shot to return to the meta.
It's possible. I actually was doing some experimentation with Werewolf by Night, and I'm like, this is actually kind of better than I remember. Losing Zabu hurts it a lot, though, because I feel like Zabu, Werewolf by Night 3, and then on 4, you start doing all your chaos was kind of fun. I don't know, man. I think Werewolf by Night might still need some love, but I totally see where you're coming from. And I like the idea of like, okay, hold on. Not only are you activating Werewolf by Night, but you're junking them with your bounce pieces as well, right? And it's cool because that shell is likely to have something like a Nihilus as well. So you got like the hood, and you have like the Falcon, then you put like the hood down, then you're beasting it, and you're hooding again, and then you're throwing it over with a Nihilus. Werewolf is bouncing all over the place. White Widow's doing everything.
Yellow Jacket's a great card there.
There's a lot of opportunities there. So I think it's going to be really complex.
Yeah, last time I played him was with the Thor deck. A lot of fun. It was great. You could do Jane to get the Yellow Jackets and things like that. I think it could get even crazier here. Maybe he gets loved in the OTA. The other thing I want to say about White Widow is anytime you have a card that can win you a location single-handedly, and yes, we want to just say Space Throne, it's legit a turn 2 Space Throne winner, which is crazy. Nobody's playing Space Throne on turn 2. But on top of that, there are just other locations. You just don't want to have that other card there, and it's hard to fill up. It's hard to be playing into, and it's punishing. Like, for example, let's say Quantum Realm, right? You push that negative over there. Now this guy has to play in there to fill it up, but it turns his cards to base power 2, but maybe that messes up his power play, right? Like, there are more punishing locations than people are thinking about. There are ones that obviously like are even playing fields, super flow, things like that is going to make it a bit more even, and you could just kill the energy for both of you guys. But the power and the effect to have that at any time, just can't be understated. Angela, huge way to punish Angela, Alex. Huge way to punish Hope Summers. Galactus, the 3 huge cards that are doing phenomenal in the meta. White Widow is a 2-cost answer to those.
Yeah, it also destroys like something like a Bar Sinister as well, because it's very unlikely someone's playing on Bar Sinister on turn 2. If someone snaps on you on Bar Sinister turn 3, you know that the Green Goblin's coming, right? Like,
yeah.
You understand that. But with Widow's, but the White Widow, that's a turn 2 play, and if it's revealed in the first 2 locations, like no one's expecting that. Like,
exactly.
No one's expecting White Widow to come down, and even though like there's only ones there, like no one's playing a turn 2 Lizard into the Bar Sinister, right?
No.
So I mean. I think that could be a good way of stealing cubes as well. We would be remiss not to mention, and thing I think would be a really good combo piece with this as well. Obviously, you're encouraging them to kind of zoo into that location. It's going to impact the Widow's Kiss, right? Because it's under. Wait, no. Because it's not a 1, 2, or 3 cost. So Widow's Kiss wouldn't be affected by Man Thing, would it?
Yes, it's a 0. But you know what? Because I was also going down. I was sad because in the Black Widow movie, you have Red Guardian and a little bit of White Widow. And I'm like, oh, man, are we going to have synergy there? But no, he kind of he does the -2 power and he turns her off. So you kind of, right? Like you're having -2, but no chance for -4. And they can also disable it. So it's kind of both. Also, her fellow Widow, Black Widow, right? Going from 2 to 3, naturally, these people can be like, oh, I'm going to put my Widow's Kiss. Or Widow's Bite on the Widow's Kiss lane. But to your point, man, that's burying that lane. That lane's going down, pretty quickly. So there's some synergy there. And it's funny you bring up Man Thing. We'll talk about him down there and just kind of his awkward, place here in Snap altogether. But yeah, anything else on White Widow? I mean, I think we covered a lot. There is a fair amount of archetypes outside of just junk. Again, there's bounce, there's control methods. Black Widow, when she was 2, was everywhere. Remember that buff? Yeah. I mean, she was in every deck as just a nice fill card, and that's why I give her 4. I feel like she is going to be strictly on a couple archetypes, but she's just going to be a good card.
I do have one more card to talk about, but I will say, though, you are right. Remember when everyone's like, hey, no one plays Black Widow. We need to buff Black Widow. And then I can just picture, like, Glenn being like, okay, you guys want Black Widow? Here you go.
Right.
Here you go. Be careful what you wish for. And everyone's like, oh, my God, Black Widow, so annoying. It's
right.
Like, of course it was, damn it. What'd you expect to happen when we nerfed buff Black Widow?
Yeah.
Like, what'd you expect to happen, man? The one thing I'll mention, though, is I think Professor X. Professor X's we're talking about goes into the Ravona shell, but most importantly, it prevents them from filling that location.
Yep.
So Professor X comes down, that Widow's Kiss is just going to stick as a -4.
And naturally, Cannonball loves Professor X as well, and even things like Juggernaut, where you can predict, where you're going to put the cards a bit more. So yeah, I agree. Pro X fits kind of right in there, no question about it. So a lot of good use cases for Widow's Kiss. I think Beast and Grandmaster, ways to multiply this effect is going to just be nutty. You're probably going to hate this week, and if you do, just play Destroy. Honestly, that's going to be your best bet, and even then, it's not exactly easy, but it will be better to handle all the craziness. You could also play a Nihilist Dex and let the -4 happen, and then go off there. Just a good package altogether. But yeah, I agree. I think she's going to be a ton of fun, and with that, I'm going to head into our next subject. Last subject we'll talk about is junk toxic combos, things that we have done in the past. But I want to start our next subject, Alex, with Marvel Snap clans. Now, we got some new information on this. I know we've been teased it a couple times. We've been talking about it what seems like forever. And keep in mind, guys, this is not final. This is just kind of what we have seen in the old data mines. And thought this would be fun to kind of break down and give our thoughts on. So let's start out. First of all, clans, buddy. The official name is either teams or alliances, I guess, are currently limited to 25 members. So that is its first look at of how much people can be in a clan. To me, that feels really small. I get why they're going small, because some games have done that to success. If you get too big, it gets chaotic. But thoughts there?
Super small, way smaller than I expected. But I can see the strategy. Like for us, I think like we would have benefited from larger clans because we have the ability to generate kind of like, excitement and kind of engagement with larger sets of people. But for the average players, like I want to set a clan with me and my friends and maybe make it joinable by other people that are just looking for a fun place to join. 25 feels like a right number. So it's like one of those things where like, I think that we could maybe be like, 25, damn, we could have been going for like 100 or even more, right? But realistically, for the average person who's, wanting to engage with clans, 25 is probably a decent number.
I feel like 25 would have been a good number to say, okay, you need this much to get like clans really benefiting the rewards, but you can go higher than that as well. Like there's tiers to it, I guess, potentially, but then maybe no one's doing 25 at that point. It seems a little small. I don't even know who I'm going to, like, what is your clan name? Obviously, it's going to be what, the Costco Black Cards, or what do you got?
I'm not even sure yet because I didn't even know anything about the system yet, and I was hoping that it was going to be larger than this. I was hoping that like there's going to be able to have like one singular clan, kind of like under the umbrella of like the Alex family of some sort. And it doesn't look like that's going to be able to happen at 25. So I'm not sure. I still have to kind of make a plan for how I'm going to approach this.
There's pros and cons, because if you do need to orchestrate like a strike, right, and everybody needs to play Deadpool at this particular moment, it's a lot easier to communicate with 25 people. On the flip side, it's a lot more strict. So we'll have to figure that out, guys. Start dropping your applications down below to join Alex in my clan. There will be clan-wide bounties and rewards, as well as personal bounties and rewards. So, like, probably to what we guessed here, play Baron Zemo and steal your opponent's cards or recruit them 25 times, and then the clan, it'll probably say 500 times, right? And so you do it yourself to get personal rewards, which let's just go ahead and note that the best part about this coming out is just more ways to get currency and passive things on Snap, credits and gold, naturally, I'm sure. And then you have, the clan-wide thing. To me, this is great. I think this will be fun, especially if they make the bounties, like, more on the fun side,
There's something worth noting, though, and I think that there's going to be people out there that are probably somewhat anxious about the idea of the social interaction of clans. Like, if there's only 25 people and you want to get the rewards of being in a clan, it might be stressful to join a clan and then, like, let's say you take a week off and then you find out you got booted because you weren't finishing enough missions and stuff.
Oh, it happens.
And now you're missing out on rewards, or you're missing out on currency or whatever. I can see people being anxious about that. Like, I can see clans being one of those things that, like, people like, hey, listen, like, I'm playing a mobile game. I kind of want to be a lone ranger. How can I access some of these rewards? And I wonder if they have kind of a solution for that, because I think that might be a real concern.
So it happens. I used to play a game called Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, and there would be, like, the more dedicated your clan was, the more rewards you got, right? But it's a mobile game, and people have just different playstyle interests. And so, I was in a clan that was like super dedicated, and I was like, I gotta back out. I don't have time to do this all the time and be on Discord multiple times a day or whatever. It was a lot of different things you had to do at once, and a lot of like time commitment, right? So there's like essentially there are clans for each type of person. Like the ones that don't play, don't expect anything. My hope is the way they structure the rewards, there is no FOMO built into it or anything like that. Or even like, you know, if they take a couple days off, this person's not going to be punished or whatever. And if they are, then, you know, I would say you join a clan that's just way more laid back. In one end, I see merit in them rewarding clans that are like more dedicated, if you will. But also it needs to be pretty accessible. And you don't want to you don't want to bring a feature in that brings a negative feeling.
Well, absolutely, 100%. Like, it needs to be something that improves the game. And like thinking back, I remember when I used to play World of Warcraft, which I played a ton of at the time, just like so many people did, I'm sure. One of the things that got me coming back was not World of Warcraft itself. Like, I was not playing World of Warcraft because of, oh, I got to get that next purple, or I got to go into this temple or whatever it is, or do a raid. I was coming back because of the social connections I had made. I still have friends from Warcraft guilds from 15 years ago that I still have to this day because of those social connections. And I think that it's really a rewarding experience in the game. And if we can build that into Marvel Snap, I think it makes Marvel Snap more sticky because like, you know, you want to like, yeah, you want to perform for your guildmates. You want to perform for your clanmates. You want to get those rewards together. And if it does foster a positive environment, it's another reason to log in. It's another reason to be involved in the overall community. So it can definitely be a good thing. And maybe they iron out some of the rougher edges over time. But, you know, I really hope that this is a very positive experience overall, and I'm sure it will be.
The way they could do that too is just introducing like profiles and being able to see like Alex's top 5 variants and what he plays with the most and when you're online and stuff like that. Like that's the stuff that encourages, right? Obviously, playing in clans, playing with friends, and having that alignment. And that's the hope. I want there to be more than just these like kind of missions. And if they give you great resources, cool. But you know, it'd be cool to go all in on the actual like playing with your friends type of feel. It looks like you can also apply tags to your clan to make them more easable or findable. And so that's probably where, you know, the whole like casual clan or like, you know, whatever. You can also put a floor on the highest ranked achieve. So you can have infinite only clans. You can also have, you know, a collection level dedicated clan as well as the floor. This is probably more for the you know, the sweats, the tryhard clans, if you will, you know, or just to, I don't know, keep out, you know, new players or something like that. I think it's important to have that. I don't know if everyone will use it though.
You know what? I think that there's merit to that to some degree. Like, I don't like that there's like exclusionary factors in it. Like, I think it should be something that brings people together, not necessarily keeping people apart. But at the same time, like, for instance, a system that was implemented in Dota 2 is very similar to this, where you have like the clan missions and then individual missions to get points and stuff like that. The way they implemented it was the more points generated by persons in guilds and also by the guild in general actually went to a guild leaderboard. So there's a chance that they might be implementing like, hey, an actual leaderboard for clans based on how many missions are being completed, how many people are like, oh, milling out of an opponent's deck and earning points for that action as a whole guild or a whole clan. I'm using the terms interchangeably. Yeah. But I do think that like it could be interesting because if you want to play guilds competitively and there's a guild leaderboard, then maybe you want just infinite players or people who, I mean, how do you even do that? There's a season reset and everyone gets booted off of the guild immediately. Like,
yeah, right. The floor. I think, really in general, man, the cool thing about clans coming out is we now are having a feature to have like our accounts talk to each other in a way, and like the momentum building on that could be awesome. Like the ability to, I'm not saying this would happen, but trade boosters one day or whatever, like things like that. Like we're having this integration of the of our accounts now, and at least speaking from the past, when Second Dinner, you know, they're slow. I gotta say they're slow on getting features out, but when they get them out, they're really well done. And my hope is that they have just polished this to, you know, absolute perfection, and we've got ourselves a pretty cool system. We'll have to find out, wait and see. But that's right now. That's the main stuff that we know about it. It should be coming pretty damn soon. You know, I would imagine they want to do clan battles and things like that. That's definitely where I probably see them taking this, which is pretty cool, man. Pretty cool. If you had 25 members versus 25 and, you know, you play each other once or something and you get the total, you know, winning bracket, that kind of stuff's a lot of fun.
It would be a lot of fun. Hard to organize, maybe. Unless, like, you can do it, like, at different times. Like, you have a week to play your match.
It'd have to be, like,
from someone in the other guild.
72 hours,
Even then, at 25 people, that would probably be hard. But I like where your head's at, though. It's an argument for making the guilds bigger, damn it, so we can have better matchmaking amongst the guild versus guild system. Yep. I'm using guild over and over again. It's clans. Why do I keep saying guild? I'm not sure.
And, like, in the game I played in the past, like, that they would lock new... Like, there would be, like, 3 or 4 new cards that were... Or new characters that were only able to get if your clan was good. I don't want them to do that. They definitely shouldn't introduce anything, but even something like a variant where you're like, oh, wow, they definitely do that. Or maybe they finally get into different card backs or effects or things like that of that nature. So we'll have to see, man, and drop down what you guys think we should both name our respective clans down below. We're going to head into our last subject here, Alex, and that is going to be the top junk and toxic cards. Now, Alex and I made a list. We checked it twice, and you know, this one it wasn't too hard. I feel like of all the archetypes to put together, we wanted to revisit the toxic archetype, the junk archetype, if you will. And if you guys haven't played in a while, you know, give our thoughts on the ones that, you know, the cards you should definitely be including in your decks. Alex, you want to start us off with some honorable mentions?
Cozy, I think we talked about Man-Thing prior. I think it's a good opportunity to bring him up again. He's kind of underperformed with regards to being a core toxic card. This should have been a card that really elevated the toxic archetype. It just didn't. It just absolutely didn't. And I think part of it's because of its reciprocating effect on your other board. So you have to play something like a Luke Cage. If you don't draw Luke Cage, things get really awkward really fast. Ultimately, Man-Thing's been a bit of a disappointment. It's had its moments where it's like been placed into decks, but then it gets cut because there's always more optimal lines, right? So I think Man-Thing is worth an honorable mention. That won't hit our top 10 here.
Yeah, risk reward factor, I think we go back to time and time again. It's just it works out. It's cool. It can definitely work. You can win with it. But there is going to be situations where like you're kind of screwed because that's all you have left in your hand and you deck 12 cards. Not easy to get together. We also talked about the high Evo cards. We're not going to put them in today's list. You know, they are toxic and junk to an effect. Cyclops, obviously, and whatnot, but not quite, you know, the new Wasp do a -1. Not quite toxic junk that, you know, we're talking about today, but Cyclops would be damn near the top of that list.
Yeah, and another one worth noting that doesn't make our top 10 is going to be Viper. Viper is one of those cards that I think, like, despite going to a 3/5, which feels like a good stat line, can be really awkward to play. Like, you can't play it on turn, like, 6 often because you're like, oh, I'm going to kick over my whatever, right? Like, I don't want to kick over something that I actually want on my side of the board, so it can be a little awkward. Yeah, you can, like, kick over, you know, a Void or a Hood or something like that, but then again, is the Hood just by itself, or is there another card there? It can be awkward at times. It does feel like a snappable moment when you have, like, the Savage Lands and you kick over a Raptor and their location has 3 Raptors sitting there. That feels really good, but those are far between. Like, you don't often get an opportunity to do that. So I found that Viper at a 3/5 is often very awkward to play.
Especially because she's a 3 now, and Annihilus 2 costs more, and you send everything that you want to send over. And so it's like, if she was a 2, it makes more sense. You got a couple, you know, you have a few turns before Annihilus, and maybe you can pull something out. It just, there's other things to do most of the time, and now even more so, I would say. I miss the old Viper, and I hope they bring her back one day. Take away the 5 power. It's all good. We want the old one back. At least I think most people do. Let's go to Kick It Off, man. Number 10 is a card that I don't think a lot of people play. She's often forgotten, often not played unless you may be doing Galactus. Alex, though, is a big fan of her, and he's going to tell us why. Selene is our number 10.
Selene's pretty good. It's underperforming expectation. Like, when it first launched, we had some high expectations for it. We thought it was going to really do a lot for the archetype as a whole. It has not done that. However, what I will say, though, is that it does feel like a very effective play in junk and goblin-based decks because you're taking those goblins and you're basically absorbing that -3 power while also being very impactful on their side too, right? You're hitting something that they probably want to play. There's a reason why they built their deck the way they did. So I do like Selene for that. However, Selene can be very awkward when you're not holding something you want to hit, right? If you don't have the Hood or you don't have a goblin and you're like, well, I guess I'm not going to play this Iron Man in my Ravonna deck this game, right?
Yeah.
That can feel really bad. But Selene as a whole, when the stars align ever so slightly, does feel like a pretty damn good card.
Yeah, for instance, like, you know, Hood, Green Goblin, you can hit, but if you have only like Pro X and you're playing that kind of build and you hit your Professor X, it's brutal, guys. It's brutal. And then you don't want to do Luke Cage to count it. No. So yeah, that's why she hits our number 10 list. More niched. I don't see her in a ton of White Widow decks, but maybe we'll be wrong. We do have White Widow on today's list, guys, just because we wanted to see where she would probably stack up. Number 9, we've got the Old Faithful, who I still think is underplayed to a large degree. Scorpion, man. I think Scorpion has been the staple in Snap for a while. It's just punishing on a lot of cards. Phoenix Force, you know, even things as simple as, you know, Iron Man, whatever we just mentioned. He's just good. He can counter Cerebro all by himself. Getting him out on 2, it just doesn't feel better than that. This will for sure be in my build of White Widow, if I were to guess. And, yeah, I'm a big Scorpion fan.
Yeah, Scorpion's great. One of the best kind of like tempo 2 plays you can do on turn 2. Feels obviously terrible later in the game, but I think that's what holds him back ever so slightly.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, like, yeah, he gets a tremendous amount of value. Like, there's a chance they have 4 cards in their hand at the start, and like he's a 4/6 theoretically, right? Provided they're not able to kind of resolve the damage you've done. I like the card. I always have. And if you think the card sucks, think about all how like annoyed you are when they play Scorpion on you and you're holding your negative cards. You're like, oh,
Right.
damn it, the stupid Scorpion, right? It's so annoying. And yes, they feel it just as annoying when you play Scorpion as well. So, wow, those sentences were a little rough on my part. But anyways, it's because Scorpion is so frustrating to have played against you. Emotional damage.
Number 8, we head to Debris, which oftentimes, man, a well-played Debris is soul-crushing. And I always want to like this card more than I do. I like Debris. I play Debris, but I feel like ultimately, like, I've seen her get cut from more lists than one. But she's damn punishing. And talk about with White Widow now, we're getting even more clogging, and you could go from Widow to either Debris or Goblin, and you're just starting to punch them a ton. With the rise of Hazmat, where obviously people are starting to like her a bit more. Mockingbird, also has good synergy there. So Debris at number 8. Anything to add to her?
Yeah, Debris I like. Can be very awkward, and I find myself often cutting Debris from decks because it's like, I'm kind of screwing myself up a little bit too. But a really well-placed Debris can really shut down a lot of the meta decks, especially like the Silky Smooth style decks, where like, hey, they have they're setting up like their Hope Summers, then all of a sudden a rock goes in that like location, and it's really frustrating because now like they don't have an opportunity to play. So I do think that like it's a very disruptive card. I like how it has the reciprocal effect. It makes it feel fair.
Yeah.
And I like the idea that you can control which locations are getting rocked based on where you play Debris. So it has a little bit of agency, which I think a lot of people don't really give it credit for. Honestly, it's a good card. It's a good card, and I wonder if it starts to make a comeback with the release of White Widow.
Another good card, Alex. Number 7. And I like him a lot more than you. I wanted him higher, but Alex, yeah, I get it. I understand it. It all comes down to how your games went with him. Dr. Octopus at number 7. I think this guy is awesome, especially in this meta and a lot of given metas, the combo-centric ones. Listen, you can get Shang-Chi punted to the face, but if you're bringing out all their cards and they got nothing left on the table, if you have a follow-up, this guy's tremendous. I love him.
Doc Ock has had his moments, and like I have played him from time to time. He just feels like so high risk, and at 10 power, like I don't know if the reward's there. You know what I mean? Like I wonder if he ever gets buffed. I wonder if he's like a 5/11 down the road, just to give him that little bit more. But he's also really not fun to play against. Like it's one of those things we talked about Black Widow, right? Like, oh, we should buff Black Widow. If we buff Doc Ock, that is probably a terrible idea for Marvel Snap as a game, right?
Yeah.
It needs to have that risk because, hey, listen, the one thing Doc Ock is really good at is finding Shang-Chi, of course, right?
Yeah.
However, it is very disruptive for everything that you've said. And if anything, perhaps you set up like you pull the Red Hulk, you pull everything out, and then you have your own Shang-Chi to actually just win on turn 6 or 5, or usually on 6 because that lane's going to be stuffed.
Yeah, I think that also with, White Widow, you can pull their cards. They have no more to play to fill up the other lane. Also, just in general, you could play on a lane. Maybe they have White Widow. You put White Widow down. They fill that lane up. Doc Ock's just a free 10 power card at that point, right? So, like, there is that scenario for him where it's like he's just good raw power to win off the lane if you need to. But yeah, Doc Ock comes in at number 7. Number 6, we have Black Widow, who when she was buffed, she was everywhere. And then they had to kind of take her back a little bit. She settled in as a 3 card. I think she's still fun. She still works out really well. Could get a lot of play right now. With White Widow coming out, I think she'll be better than Black Widow is. But yeah, we have her at number 6.
I like her, honestly. And I think that this is one of those cards that is probably better than the meta would indicate. You're not seeing much Black Widow being played right now, and it's probably just because like it's just not making the meta decks. And honestly, if you start splashing Widow into your decks, it's probably going to perform just fine. Like I don't think this card's bad. I don't think this card's amazing either. But I think that it's being slept on. It's kind of out of the zeitgeist. Like people aren't thinking about Black Widow right now. They're going to be thinking about it next week, though.
Dude, there's going to be junk everywhere. I think Green Goblin, who is our next one at number 5, is the definition of really pigeonholed just to Galactus. And I hope that players can continue to utilize him in junk and clogging methods. Tale as old as time. Guys, Green Goblin with Ghost Spider is such a fun play because you can literally move that Green Goblin to another lane if you need to. Maybe you guessed wrong, telegraphed wrong. Just tremendous value now with a lot of these cards. And they're going to be just paranoid you're playing Galactus. You put this on the left lane, and you do White Widow on the right lane, and they're like, what am I doing here? What do I do? Because if I don't fill up the left lane, they could Galactus me easy. That's where I think you could play a lot of head games.
I do like Green Goblin a lot, and I often find myself playing Green Goblin over the Hobgoblin.
Yeah.
Simply because it comes out earlier. I feel like Hobgoblin's a higher risk play, so you usually want to play it in conjunction with something like a Daredevil. Because if you, I mean, Green Goblin is going to be space on the board. There's space on the board, you're usually able to pick your shots better. With Hobgoblin, I don't know about you, but I always want to gamble like that one slot, like, you know, just shut her down style play. And I think Daredevil definitely does help with that. But Green Goblin's great. It has everything you need. And people say, oh, but it's like, you know, a 3 cost. It can get destroyed naturally, right? Carnage does a lot of damage to it. But also, like, they have to deal with it. That -3 power is significant. And the fact that it's occupying a slot on the board is almost detrimental to your opponent very often. So yeah, I love this card. It's one of my most played toxic cards.
And in general too, like in Conquest, like Green Goblin's still good as you play through matches. Hobgoblin, you get the one-off surprise, and then your opponent's kind of like prepping for that in the future. It loses a little bit of its sting. Next up, we have Hazmat, that I don't think would have been on this list at all a couple months ago. Definitely has risen up as we have gotten these decks that have, you know, multiple cards being played down. People often forget you just get tremendous value so long as you play her at the right time. You don't always have to have the crazy pop-off with her to make it happen, and she's just been killing it in these Surfer lists and many more.
Yeah, so Hazmat's made a major resurgence in the meta over the last little bit, and it's kind of cool. And I'm often seeing Hazmat being saved for like a Wong Miracle play style thing, and I've even played Evo decks where I'll play Hazmat out. Like if I see them starting to kind of do some stuff, and they're, oh, it's a Patriot deck, and they have you know, a Squirrel Girl out, and they're playing a Mr. Sinister, I'll play Hazmat on turn 3. I got no problem with that. It makes my Abomination super cheap early. I got no issue with that, right? I do think that there's a lot of flexibility with this card, but at the same time, it's so reliant on Luke Cage. However, in theory, if you're doing like some sort of wombo combo, if they have more cards on the field than you do, and you got like some sort of Wong Mystique action going on, then in theory, you should be able to out-trade them based on the fact that they have more cards on the board, getting hit with this negative power. But in my experience with Hazmat is I never find Luke Cage, and everything's more difficult.
Right. That takes us to number 3, and that is going to be Cannonball. And Cannonball is just proven to be, yeah, as we said it earlier, just kind of aging really well. He was a little bit meta dependent, and I think the pieces that we've missed a bit are starting to, you know, come together. We have Cannonball now having a lot more utility than he had even when he came out, which wasn't that long ago. Probably a lot of people don't have him, and so unless, you know, you're just all in on the junk archetype, I would say Cannonball is not a must-have card, but really, really strong right now, and just punishing, you know, altogether.
You know, I totally understand what you're saying, and I agree. Cannonball's been very good, but at the same time, it's like when I play him, I'm like, he feels ever so slightly awkward, but you see the power potential, and you see the opportunity that Cannonball can provide. And it's interesting because it's like, I believe we rated him about a 2-star card. And in that kind of moment in the meta, he definitely felt like a 2-star card. But now as the meta shifts, new cards come out, new synergies come out, the meta changes altogether, and what becomes popular changes. All of a sudden, Cannonball starts to climb. He's definitely a 3-star. He's starting to push towards 4. He's starting to change with the meta, which is really interesting. And so overall, I've come away impressed with Cannonball. But I can still see how, like, you know, people would be reserved to spend 6K tokens on him.
Yeah, there's a lot for, you know, very pigeonhole of what he does do. But that does take us to number 2, and we have White Widow all the way up here. And it's just simply because she's the cheapest way to pump out clogging effects on the opponent's side. It curves, it fills in that gap that we have right now in junk. And we both just think she's going to have this impact on that archetype specifically, because the wide amount of use on both turns, locations, different counters, different decks. She's got a lot of potential, man.
She does. She definitely does have a ton of potential, and can't wait to get my hands on the card. I think that it's going to be interesting, as I said before, from a macro perspective. It almost amplifies what you can do with some of the other junk cards, right? Because they're going to run out of options eventually on how they kind of deal with, you know, the card that's on the screen, right? Which is like perfect, right? I really do like how White Widow's going to manipulate how your opponent can play.
Yeah, man, and I don't think it's a surprise that we have at number 1 is the Annihilus, the Sentry, the Hood, all kind of in one package. He's not going to be dethroned anytime soon. I think this is going to be our Junk King, kind of his role. I mean, we kind of said that when he came out. That is his role in Snap. He is the glue that finally puts junk and toxic decks together. There was a lot of this missing, like, what do you do in this 5 slot? And that's where it's like Doc Ock, maybe Spider-Woman. Annihilus filled the gap, and now he's kind of the king of that throne.
It was probably confusing to a lot of people, wondering why, like, where's Hood? Where's Sentry? Why aren't these guys talking about them? It was because we wanted to kind of reserve them for like this #1 spot, because realistically, this 3-card package is the ultimate package in Marvel Snap with regards to Toxic, with regards to Junk, and just overall in the game. Like, it's one of the highest performing, if not the highest performing package in the game. And so they definitely do have to go together, because individually they're good, but it's Annihilus that really brings it all together. Without Annihilus, you know, you're trying to play Viper with Sentry, and we all know what that was like. It was awful, right? You could even cope a little bit, and you can play like, you know, some other cards like, you know, Valkyrie with Sentry and stuff like that. We tried, we walked those paths, right? But at the end of the day, with Annihilus, with the Hood, with Sentry, it's just a remarkable package that is a potential game winner, conquest winner, tournament winner. It's everything. It's all of the above. It's just an absolutely remarkable card.
Well, we got a White Widow coming out. We have the OTA later this week. Sure to be some shenanigans going on, guys. Get ready to get your carnages out if that is something you hate. Guys, we're going to be talking about Red Guardian in review over on Alex's side, as well as the top 10 worst cards in Marvel Snap and the Snapchat mailbag. Appreciate you guys hanging out. We got another great week of the Snapchat. Until the next one, happy snapping, guys. All right, bud.